And if I can get the word when we are live on Facebook, that would be helpful, Katie.
It says that we are now streaming live.
Okay, very good. Thank you everyone for joining. I always have a few little technical difficulties, but we're here and I'm so glad that we're here and glad that you can join us. The Novi Public Library's conversation is talking racism, and I'm really excited today because we have a great team of young adults. I will not call them children because they are young adults, aren't you? Thank you and welcome to everyone here. Instead of me introducing each person as I usually do, I'm going to have each person introduce themselves and tell your age. You can talk about what school you're in or what you're graduated and your major or field of study. Let's start with Brooke. Good morning. Good evening.
Good evening, Ms. Anderson. My name is Brooke Taylor. I'm 19 years old. I attend the University of Michigan and I am a dance major.
Naomi.
Hi, I'm Naomi, and I just graduated from Novi, and I'll be heading to Northwestern in the fall, and I'm going to major in neuroscience on a pre-med track. And I'm 18, sorry.
Jack.
I'm Jack Saunders. I'm 19, and I attend Notre Dame College, where I am studying exercise science.
Troy.
Hey, hello, my name is Troy Henry. I currently attend Oakland University, on my way to graduate in December. I'm 21 years old and my major is in political science with a minor in communications.
Arena.
Hi, everyone. My name is Arena Chavda. I go to Novi High School. I'm 16 years old and I plan on studying engineering in college.
Very good. I see a new face down there in the bottom. Are you joining us? Bottom right.
This is Nicole. Is my camera on? I don't know how to.
I don't see you, Nicole. Nicole is one.
Thank you.
There you are,
okay.
Nicole. Oh, all right.
Hello.
There you are.
All right. Sorry, I'm sorry. What did I miss?
That's okay. We're on live on Facebook right now, and you are one of our co-facilitators. We're starting off with you telling me your name, your age, and if you're in school, what your major is in college.
Okay. So my name is Nicole Kazmika. I'm 18 and I'm going to be going to OCC in the fall. And I don't really know what I plan on going into yet, but I might go into politics. So, yeah.
Then you're in the right place, huh? We're going to start talking about, no,
exactly.
This is not politics, but Brooke and Brian, they were my special guests here. We had them scheduled to sing a song, an opening song. I like to break the ice a little bit. Did you get your audio and video all set?
We have.
Want to give it a try?
Can y'all hear us good?
We're going to try anyway, because these are a phenomenal group of young people. I know they both have millions and millions of followers on, what is it, YouTube, Instagram, all of the above?
TikTok.
Oh, TikTok, is that what it is? See, I'm telling my age, aren't I? Well, let's try the song and see if it works out, okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you.
I was born by the river in a little tent. No, just like the river, I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. It's been so hard living, but I'm afraid to die. 'Cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know the change is gonna come. Oh, yes, it will.
Very good. Thank you. It worked out. Tell everyone where they can find you on the social media channels.
Go ahead. All right, my Instagram is Brian Lewis. That's Brian with an I, 3 N's, and then Lewis, Louis.
Oh, mine is Brookie All Day One, BROOKIE, and then All Day One.
Thank you so much. Fantastic job. I think that broke the ice just perfectly.
Thank you.
Now we're going to dive right into our conversation. We don't have that much time and so many people, and we're going to talk about racism from the perspective of young adults. And I'd like to start right off with some experiences that any of you may have had in terms of racial injustices. Can anyone speak on anything that you've encountered or someone that you know have encountered something related to race?
I'll start us off. So, in my senior year of high school, I planned a Black History Month assembly as well as a Black History Spirit Week. And the first day of that Spirit Week was entitled Wake Up Monday, and you were supposed to wear all Black in support and in respect of those, our ancestors who have come before us, and of just Black leaders in general. And one student from my high school abruptly wore all white, and a teacher broke down because she felt like he was supporting the KKK. And what I did was I handed him a sheet from Barack Obama's quote that said something about change. And it had a piece of candy because that's what we were passing out that day. And I just gave it to him and I didn't say anything. And that is probably one of the most abrupt or visions and experiences of racism that I've had.
Brooke, while we're talking to you, you are actually have organized at least one, maybe several racial protests or marches or something. Can you talk about that, please?
Yes, in my high school years, I planned 2 assemblies for Black History Month. I've also planned a diversity conference entitled Humanity for All, where we were comparing a Jewish church synagogue shooting with the 16th Street Baptist church shooting. And just recently, I organized Drive In for Justice, and it was a program / a protest that was really for the Black Lives Matter movement. And I was inspired to create this because I have a 90-year-old grandmother at home, and I know so many people want to protest, but are susceptible to COVID and are just afraid of attracting COVID. So the program included a history synopsis, words from the West Bloomfield chief from the police department. We've had a variety of performances, spoken word, dance, and song. And we also had a speaker talking about the what now. And we also, I'm sorry, I'm talking so much.
Oh, you're fine.
We also did a fundraiser for the Equal Justice Initiative, and we raised about $1,000 for that.
I love it. I love it. How many of you have attended any protest? And if you have, tell me why.
So I'll go. I have attended a few.
I'll go first. I've attended.
I'm sorry.
Oh, shoot. Sorry. You can go.
Okay, go ahead.
Let's go with Arena.
Oh, okay. So I have attended a few Black Lives Matter protests. So Miss Tia, I work under her. She's kind of like my mentor, and she has put together a few of the protests. So I went to all of her protests. I just love seeing how people come together at these protests and set aside our differences to move forward on an important issue that needs to be solved. And I've also helped CAPI, which is Coalition of American Pluralism in India, put together a Google meeting where they showed solidarity for the Black Lives Matter protest. And there we basically just had speakers who talked about their experiences and how we're going to bring change to the problems we have right now.
Very good. Naomi, I know you also, you were working on a project actually to be held initially at the Novi Public Library, and then you wanted a larger venue as well to talk about racial injustices or race relations. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Both you, Naomi, and Christina, I think we're working together.
Yeah, and Nicole too, so she can also speak on that. But yeah, so basically before all of this happened, before the awful killing of George Floyd, and now that we're having all these dialogues, Christina and I noticed a lot of injustices in our school and in our respective schools, high schools, and our personal experiences. And we thought, you know, why not create an event where we could have bring together high school students from all over Metro Detroit into one venue where we could have these types of dialogues and be able to bridge that gap that I feel like our high school environment doesn't really allow us to have these types of conversations. So if we are able to, you know, bring people together and be able to have a conversation with someone you normally wouldn't talk to. It would be able to like have a positive impact and change the way you think. Even like it doesn't have to have a huge impact and like create this huge change, but just the little things, like you see things differently. So that's just the reason. I'm sure Christina or Nicole can elaborate on that.
Sure, Nicole, let's go with you. I know you were going to say something earlier.
Oh yeah. So I've attended like around 10 protests, and I've gone to the ones in Detroit. Like I've gone to around 4, maybe 5 of those, and I think, and I've also gone to like more local ones. So I've gone to one in Plymouth and Farmington Hills, and I've kind of like taken stand and like led kind of in a way, because I've just been to so many. I've had so much experience with it, and like I would just use what I knew and like helped people with like, I could tell that teenagers who organized it, I would give them my input on how to like do like how to basically organize the protest, because there was certain groups that just didn't know, they're for the movement, they have the passion, they have the energy, they just don't know how to show it. And so I kind of just gave my like tips on everything. But what I've noticed is that like since I went to one in Plymouth, there was like a lot of not many people of color, and I feel like the ones in Detroit were just so powerful because there were so many people who were really, really passionate. Like you could just tell with the passion that people have that they were supporting it more. And I feel like the ones in Detroit were probably the best ones to attend, because it just showed like the people and what they just, it was just so powerful. I can't even explain it, just because just the love that you see between people was so like strong. So yeah.
Good. Christina, what about you? You were a part of the organization of the protest or organization of something. You can tell me a little bit.
Yeah, I participated in a protest in Detroit. It was probably one of the smaller ones, but like I just think the importance of going to protests, or like multiple protests are happening, is just trying to make the message clear about like Black Lives Matters, and there needs to be change within the system. That's just about the protest, and then backtrack to the our diversity conference with Naomi and Nicole. Just kind of just going along with what Naomi said, we just wanted to bring people together that usually don't meet or don't have the chance to meet, and try to get as many perspectives and ideas of people coming together and starting off that initial conversation that nowadays, like especially during this time, people are trying to have like, so yeah.
Seemed like I did ladies first. I didn't intend that. Let's talk to Troy. Hi, Troy.
Hello.
Tell me something about some of the experiences you've had with racial injustices, or any projects or organizations that you're working with.
Okay. Some of which that come immediately to mind. I mentioned that I go to Oakland University. The office I work for is the Center for Multicultural Initiatives, where we basically, our job is to promote social change, and to pretty much just, I don't want to say be the Black voice on campus, but in a fewer words,
that way,
yeah, in a few words, basically that's what it is. Yeah.
That is not uncommon, and it's from your age to my age and on up. Sometimes you're the Black voice, and that's just the way it is. What do you feel about that?
Being a part of it has been great, and especially since being at a PWI, predominantly white institution, where let's just say it's not uncommon for you to be the only Black person in your classes, or to be the only person of color in your classes, or for there to be so few of you. It's good to have that sort of support, and to be able to be that sort of support for other people that may come into the campus and feel that they are alone, especially during times like this, where if we were having classes or able to be on campus and everything, we would have events to pretty much show them love, to show them that they are accepted, even though all of the craziness in the world that's going on at the moment. So,
okay. Jack, let's talk to you. Tell me about any kind of racial injustices that you've encountered or witnessed yourself.
So I actually started to experience more of racial injustices when I started to date my girlfriend, who's African American descent, and whenever we would go out in public with one another, people would give us looks. Whenever like her and I would just interact with each other, and like the looks we would get is like ones of like disgust, as if like her and I being together is not right. And compared to if, let's say, I was dating someone who's white like me, they wouldn't even give me a second look.
And how do you feel about that? Do you and your girlfriend talk about it?
Honestly, my girlfriend didn't even notice it until like I actually mentioned it to her. And for me, like how it makes me feel is it just makes me just really sad for like people's prejudices to not allow like to not see like that two people together are just happy, but instead just to see like disgust of something that they don't like.
What anyone can answer. What do you feel about the racial tensions going on today? Brooke?
I'm the only Brooke in this, right?
Yes, you're the other Brooke is gone. Sorry, Brooke Taylor.
I feel like, well, one, this racial tension has been going on for much too long, and George Floyd really kind of woke America up again. And when I first saw the video of George Floyd, my whole body was paralyzed, because that could have been my brother, that could have been my dad. And to see my 90-year-old grandmother who has come out of the South, and seeing her two brothers almost getting lynched, and then me and her watching the TV together, seeing the police on George Floyd's neck, is just like, why is history repeating itself? And why has it taken this long for us to begin these uncomfortable conversations? This should have been addressed, and it needs to continue being addressed, because Black Lives Matter is more than a moment. It's really a movement that will not be unbroken until there's really liberty and justice for all.
Anyone else have a comment on that? What did you feel about the George Floyd incident?
I saw a post on it, and it showed two conflicting images. One of a police officer on George Floyd's neck, and the other of like Colin Kaepernick like kneeling during a football game. And the post like read like, which of these like kneelings is more acceptable? And everyone, well, not everyone, most people would have commented about how it's more acceptable for like the kneeling of Colin Kaepernick compared to like kneeling on someone's neck to restrain them. And
what you brought up there, very good. Continue.
And like those who like supported the that said like the kneeling on George Floyd's neck was okay, were just said some very wrong things, in the sense of that it's, and that are just very ugly.
Yes, I understand. As a part of some of the protests that we see out there, we also see some of the negative side, maybe looting, destroying of property. Let me hear some opinions on that. Troy?
Okay. I would say, of course, looting is wrong, but it has sparked some interesting conversation, I would say, especially depending on who you talk to, I guess, about whatever is happening. For instance, after when we had riots and looting, along with the protests and everything going on in Minneapolis, excuse me, the issue was that I would have conversations with some of my older, I guess, people, and it would kind of immediately go into, well, why are they looting? That's not how you do this. That's not how you do that, which is true. But at the same time, I felt like the focus should have been on, well, why are we even talking about this place at all? Why are we even talking about, or like, why is this instance on everybody's mind right now, which would be the injustices that are happening. So yeah, that's kind of what I would want to say. Try to think of it as, would we be talking about any of this if any of these awful things weren't happening in the first place? Wow. The negative sides are also there too. So
I understand that. Naomi, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just find it extremely ironic because like I do you remember the time when I think it was when Kaepernick was first kneeling and thousands of people were burning Nike shoes. And like I it's like and then the whole fact of how, it's inconvenient. Oh, we're upset about the whole looting thing, but if we look at history, you know, um white people have been looting the African continent for hundreds of years. So we're just gonna ignore that, but because somebody broke into an Apple store, let's get mad and forget about the whole reason why people are protesting. And I feel like there were also hired like there were police officers who were going undercover as protesters and breaking windows to actually start the riots. It's just no one really talks about that either. So I feel like there's like this attention of, like, oh, let's just focus on this is not the right way to protest. And, news outlets tend to cover more like violence and stuff like that. So like that gets seen, but then there's thousands of peaceful protests where people are, really having these conversations and really learning things, but that just doesn't really get covered. I just wanted to add that.
One quick thing to piggyback off of Naomi and Troy. So I definitely don't condone looting, but I do understand the pain and the hurt behind the reason why they are looting. And also yesterday I watched this documentary about Martin Luther King Jr. entitled King of the Wilderness. And I remember he said, I'm not going to say burn it down, burn it down. I'm going to say build, build, organize and organize. And I think that is the route that I've chose to gone with. I chose to do with
Got
my
it.
process.
That's good. What? Sure, Irina, go on.
I completely agree with all of you. And the thing is, the looting thing has brought up a whole debate. And like undercover cops have been going in and the media is just making protesters look bad. But you have to understand the frustration behind it. People have tried to protest against this peacefully for so long. And I don't condone looting. I don't think it's a good thing, but I understand where it's coming from. People have been kneeling on soccer fields, football fields, basketball fields, and they've kept getting shut down time after time. And people have been protesting peacefully time after time. So when, like in Minnesota, when like the first looting for the George Floyd thing happened and they got this much attention, they like from the perspectives of the people who are hurt and frustrated and in pain who have to go through this in their daily lives, they see this as a way of telling others, as a way of showing their voice. I completely agree with their message. And now you can see the change protesters have. Protesters are the ones trying to keep it peaceful. As Naomi said, it's the police who are inciting riots or just who are starting to go and hit peaceful protesters. So you have to really understand the frustration that comes behind this. This has been going on for hundreds of years, and this really needs to stop.
Good comment. Very good. Should anything be done, and I know the answers that you're going to have, should anything be done to break racial barriers and what?
I'll go on with that one.
Nicole?
Well, honestly, I think, I just wanted to add on to what Irina said. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry, did I pronounce your name right? Okay, cool. I just wanted to say, I think, honestly, it's just like the police officers that are causing all this anyways, because from going to protest, you can see that the police officers are inciting people to react in a negative way. Like, I went to the first one in Detroit as soon as like the thing happened, as soon as George Floyd was killed, and you could just see like officers almost ran people over, and they were like starting arguments with protesters, and you don't really like see that on the news just because they want to focus on the bad stuff. And there's always going to be those people at the protests who are either for peace or like they have so much anger they want to fight back, which is understandable. And to add on, I just wanted to say, like, when we first started talking, I wanted to talk about Breonna Taylor, and I'm sure everyone knows like about her. So when you say like what should be done about racial injustice, there has been so many petitions and so many things for Breonna Taylor, like in her name. But I feel like since she's a Black woman, it's like even worse where people just don't want to listen at all. Like people don't already barely listen to women, you know? Like the feminism, that's why feminism is a thing. But the fact that she's a Black woman is why people are still not listening, which I think is just so ridiculous. Especially since I don't know if you guys have heard, but there's already like a documentary about to be made in her name on like FX or Hulu or something. And they all know like, and there's already been a law made in her name, but her killers literally have not been arrested. And I just think that's ridiculous. Like everyone knows that what happened to her is messed up. So I just don't understand why like the police officers who did it are not arrested. You know what I mean? I just think there's like, it's just, no one's doing any, like nothing is being done to help her, you know? It's like the petitions and like everything, like all the protests are not enough. So what more can the people do to really just get her justice? You know what I mean? Like what more can people do?
Who else can comment on that? Good point.
I completely agree. Like all this stuff is happening and people, like a lot of people choose to stay ignorant. But and I've also been to like a lot of protests where police officers just keep running protesters over. But the things that I've seen recently, like the protesters banding together and like forming an initiative to stay peaceful, I love that. And as for like the police, the whole George Floyd thing and like all of these racial crimes have really showed us like a major flaw in the system. Like it's always been there, but now it's being documented, so people are finally knowing about it. When a police officer is charged with a racial crime or like fired or on probation, it's not listed in their background when they apply to a new department. So they're literally just getting fired from one department and moving on to the one down the street. And that is not okay. We need to do something about that. And the other thing is that as like you said with Breonna Taylor, her killers have not been charged or anything. And that's because police officers and police departments, they're strong enough to fight back against unions and prosecutors. We need to get the DA's office, the prosecutor's office on our side. And the only way to do that is inciting dialogue. Like for little kids, if you talk to them about race, they're not gonna grow up being as ignorant. They're gonna see people for people, not the color of their skin or their religion or their race. And as for like people our age and like older people, we need to find the people in power who have the power to do something and keep pressuring them to do something. If the DA's office or the prosecutor's offices got stricter about it and denied it when police unions and police officers just tried to throw away cases like Breonna Taylor's, that would not happen. People would get justice more. Like even in the George Floyd thing, we've all seen the videos, and the police officer kneeling on his neck, he had a calm face the whole time, and that wasn't an accident. It was on purpose so he could write the whole murder off as an accident, and we need to stop that. We need to stop, the system needs to stop giving the impression that people can get away with this and that this is okay.
Good point. Troy, can you comment on any of this and your opinion about the police officers?
Okay. I guess to echo what a lot of us have been saying is accountability, truly, on the, I would say the actions of the officers, but also the actions of people that like employ, I guess, these officers, the actions of people that are in charge of all of these policies and things that truly, I guess, affect us, even if people don't take, I guess, that part of living here, I guess, like that serious, if that makes any sense. Like, let's just say with my friends, I will explain the need and the reason why we should all vote and take that part of our civic duty serious. But then they usually will return back with me and say like, well, we vote, we do this, but yet and still all these things still happen. So it's really just trying to find a solution that is like a final solution instead of a Band-Aid. Kind of how my young adult cohorts have said, we keep seeing like band-aids on the solution. We keep seeing it's nice seeing Black Lives Matter painted on the street. It's nice seeing all of these cute things that go viral. But as we all have said, Breonna's killers are still not convicted, or even yet and still, I can turn on the local news and see more brown and Black people being killed in similar fashions to how George Floyd died. So it's really just a lot of, I would say, like, not necessarily policy focused, but accountability focused. So people will understand that once you do something bad or get caught in an accident or whatever people like to paint it as, that there are serious consequences for it.
Right. Anyone else have a comment on that?
I
Jack?
have. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Jack.
it's okay.
No, you can go ahead of me. It's fine.
Mhm.
It's all good. You can go
Brooke?
first.
I believe the Black woman is the most disrespected person in America, and Breonna Taylor is just one example of that. And we also have to remember that all the police killings and everything that we see on TV, on social media, there's that many more that we don't know about.
Mhm.
And that's just something that blows my mind every day. So that, keep it short and simple. That's what happens.
Jack, do you have a comment?
I actually have a little bit to say.
Okay.
I kind of agree with like what everyone is saying. And everyone always talks of like the solution of let's have like a conversation, but it's very hard to conversation with people like such as us who are willing to discuss like a topic like this and are like-minded of everyone is like created equal. But there's then those who have grown up with the generations of racism where they view one race as superior over the others. So people like us can talk all we want, but people like them who do not want that discussion just won't participate and won't allow things to change. And
Continue.
I actually had a question. Has everyone like heard about the incident that occurred at Lake Orion? I want to say it was a couple weeks ago.
I'm not sure. Tell us about it.
So at this restaurant in Lake Orion, this lady was exiting the restaurant and bumped into, and the lady was white, and she bumped into a teenage girl who was African American and did not even like apologize. So the child and her mother then are trying to like have the lady apologize because she bumped into her. But the woman would just not like admit fault in the situation. And so the whole time, like the mother and like daughter are just like trying to talk to the lady, but she just won't have any of it. And eventually, like they start to try to leave, and the mother's like just starting to like walk behind the vehicle, and all of a sudden the white woman comes out of her van with a with her gun drawn.
Mhm.
And like I watched this video and it was very graphic to say the least.
Yes, I'll give them. Anyone remember seeing that?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
saw that video too. I
Mhm.
just like
Yeah.
didn't know where it was.
Mhm.
But yeah, like I definitely agree. All of this, this needs to change. The society, like the system, has to change. We can't have a system that has racism built into every part of it and then expect it to treat everyone fairly. But in order to do that, there needs to be awareness from the beginning. And like even though we can't change it now, we can change it in the younger generations, our siblings, little kids, elementary school kids, middle school kids, because that's what really matters right now. And like we cannot keep identifying people by their skin, race, or religion. It impacts who we think we are and what we think we can achieve. Part of the challenge minorities face is to change the perceptions of themselves, and like we need to take pride in ourselves, and that's what we need to teach our younger generations to do as well. Like all the minorities, like kids especially, who might feel insecure in a prominently white school or like certain areas like that, they need to learn to take pride in themselves and be proud of who they are instead of denying it or trying to fit in by whitewashing their culture.
Mhm. And I know we were talking about a little bit earlier, schools and education. And in terms of African American studies, I know in college that's offered, but in high school and elementary and middle school, how much attention is given to African American studies? Can someone speak on that?
I'll speak on it first. It's actually pretty like poor. It's a briefly like touched upon subject where we learn of like the slave trade, Civil War, and the civil rights movement, but even aspects of those are kept like away from us, where if we want to learn about it, we have to then research it ourselves. Like in high school, I rarely ever heard the name of like Malcolm X, who was a key prominent figure in the civil rights movement, and it took like me having to look things up by myself to learn of like the effect that he had on the movement as well.
I know when I was in school many years ago, it was Martin Luther King, Harriet Tubman, and occasionally Rosa Parks. Is it still the same?
Yes.
Yes.
Anybody new?
Can I just add something real quick?
Certainly.
Um,
Naomi.
so not only are we not talking enough about African American history in our US history courses, but I feel like not enough is said about the people that we normally hear about. Like I didn't know this until like recently. Harriet Tubman actually not only, yeah, she was a part of like the Underground Railroad, she led that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that freed about 300 slaves, which was amazing in and of itself. But she also was like a soldier and a spy for the Union Army during the Civil War, which I had no idea about in my classes. And that was literally like, besides Martin Luther King, that was one of the only people we talked about African American history. And she like was the first woman to lead a military armed operation that freed more slaves than the Underground Railroad. I think it was around 700 slaves. And we just forget to talk about that. So I feel like not only do we not talk enough about African American history in general, like a bunch of other very like qualified individuals who impacted our country today, but we don't talk enough about the people that we normally learn about.
Anyone else?
I totally agree. Like last year, I took like a few AP history courses, and the thing is, they are supposed to be advanced, yet they don't go into depth about any of this. We briefly talk about slavery. We briefly talk about any of the Black activists, and the thing is, when we research on our own, we find so much more, and there is so much Black history in America. It's part of like the whole country growing, but none of the books show that. Even like in general, like articles, newspapers, and like textbooks that we use, they show a lot of the pictures in black and white when they were taken in color at that time. They put this like shield on the whole story by showing it in a perspective where like the reader thinks that it's in the past. All the books show it in a way that it's done, it's over, we've moved on from this. But in reality, we haven't. It's not giving enough attention to how it's being continued on and not stopped. It just kind of gives us like brief parts of the history, and then it changes the subject to like industrialism or stuff like that.
Christina, I haven't heard much from you. Do you have any opinion on that? Or how was it when you were in high school in terms of education in the African American studies, and what needs to be done or what has been done?
In my experience, a lot of like the African American people who are mentioned in history is either through like the abolition movement, civil rights, or slavery. We don't really get a lot of, or we don't get any of heroes that are in STEM, especially like entrepreneurs, like people not just dealing with the constant racism, but have affected society like as a whole, as innovation. So we don't get a whole lot of that.
Do you think it's important for change? Is it necessary, and why?
Yeah, because without like those people like who are in STEM, like people like kind of influence, or like not influence, but like reinforce like stereotypes, like usually like the angry Black woman, or like, you know, just like Black people only like scream and shout about their problems, but they don't really contribute to society. So if we have more of a well-rounded history about Black people, then that can probably break down some of those stereotypes.
Let's talk a little bit about microaggressions. I know I talked to Naomi a little bit. You didn't have necessarily direct experiences with hard racism, but you have experiences with microaggressions. Can you talk about that, Naomi?
Yeah. So I think I couldn't even remember all the times, but one of the times that really stuck out to me was junior year, like when we were starting to get into the college applications process. And I obviously had some big dreams for colleges. I'm going to like one of the top schools on my list, which is Northwestern, and I'm really happy about it. But I was talking to some people, and they kind of associated the fact that like, oh, you know, you'll probably have like a better chance of getting into, you know, that type of school because, you know, like they wouldn't say it, but the message was already pretty clear that I had the whole affirmative action diversity card to play, which, and it had nothing to do with the fact that like, you know, I'm a smart person or I was worthy enough of it. So I obviously didn't let it get to me. I mean, people can think what they think, but I do think it's like a lot of people believe that. So yeah.
Any other similar experiences, Brooke?
Yes, I've had a similar experience. And first of all, I just want to say I'm so sorry, Naomi, that you've dealt with that. And it's not fair. It's not right. And you're a smart girl. I can already tell. And I just met you, and I'm proud of you. For me,
you're gonna make me cry. I love this. I'm just so touched and overwhelmed by the level of depth that you are displaying here this evening. Continue. I'm sorry, Brooke.
Thank you. I'm a dance major at the University of Michigan, and I remember a teacher in ballet saying, "Oh my gosh, how can you jump so high? You must have grown up with bad floors." Like saying
what?
The floor is bad, and that's why my knees are so strong, and that's why I can jump high. So that's probably one of the craziest and the most permanent one that I've ever dealt with.
I'm sorry, I think, can you repeat that? Say that. What did she say?
Oh my gosh, why can you jump so high? You must have grown up with bad floors. Because for dancers, it's really important that we have sprung floors so we can jump high. So.
Troy, I see your facial expression similar to mine. Comment.
Yeah, I'm really just reacting, honestly. Kind of not to make this the CMI show, but specifically about my microaggressions or things of that nature. Like we talk about those types of things and we encourage students to come and talk to us because things like that, oftentimes people, unfortunately, given their privilege or given just not really thinking about what they're saying, will say those types of things and really not mean anything by it, but not even understand the impact it can have on like the person that they're saying it to. Something that may be light and easy for them, and it's a quick thought, but unfortunately comes out their mouth, turns into, wow, okay, you didn't have to even say anything like that when I'm just another student that's here to get my education the same as everyone else. So I'm sorry, I'm a facial expression. I'm a facial expression person. So I was just like, wow.
Yeah, I understand that completely. I want you all to prepare some final statements. You're going to all have about 30 seconds. I'm going to continue asking questions, but think of a closing statement that you want to make in terms of the discussion that we're having today. Okay, so keep that in the back of your heads. Right now, I want to talk about as well some of the statues that are being torn down. Are we all familiar with that? Some of the ones that have been around forever. Yes. Jack, talk about that a little. What do you think about it? In favor of, against, or say something about it for me?
It's hard for me to comment on because I understand the taking down of the statues. On the other hand, I understand the justification for why to keep them up. It's a part of our history. But if I had to lean more towards the side, I would say the side of taking the statues down, as there are more prominent and better figures of history that we should be depicting instead of those individuals.
Someone else had a comment. Were you still talking?
I'm-
I don't know if I had a problem with your audio. Christina?
No, you
Okay,
can
I'm
go.
sorry, I
Nicole.
haven't heard from you, Nicole, in a little bit.
Okay, so personally, I'm in favor of the statues going down because I feel like even with the education system, a lot of our history is so whitewashed that that's the reason why we don't learn about literally like anything in depth. You know, we were basically grown up into thinking Christopher Columbus was, you know, symbolized as a god, you know? And so we didn't really like learn the implications of what he did to Native Americans until we were older and we realized, you know, what he actually did. And so statues of him, I think, should be taken down because the one thing we're focusing on like the minor pros, but we're not focusing on the major cons of these, you know, people who are behind these statues. And so I think there should be like statues of people who are more, you know, influential instead of just the ones who own slaves. And I personally, honestly, I think it's pretty awesome how people are taking that matter into their own hands and taking them down, because you can already imagine like how hard it must be for people to, you know, report the statue, get the statue taken down, you know, all that process, instead of, you know, people at protests just taking them down. You know, like the people, especially in different countries that are standing up for the movement, I think are probably like the best people ever. And I have a friend who lives in Sweden and he says like they're protesting there too. And I think it's great that the movement's going so far, especially with like, I just think that our history needs to reflect more on what we're trying to be, you know, hidden. Because in the education system, we were not educated much on slavery. I had a Black teacher in 8th grade who made us watch Roots. And I think that was probably like, I don't know if anyone has heard of that, but that was kind of like going in depth of slavery. And I think that was like the most like, that was just like the best thing I think I've ever had to learn in all my years, because it just taught me so much. And I think that's why people are so ignorant, because we don't learn everything in school. And I think that needs to change. But going on with the statues, I think we should just have more influential people representing our statues, just because we have so many statues of slave owners, you know.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, I
keep
completely
going.
And that was all I had to say, but you guys can go now. I just don't think we should have statues of slave owners, because
So what do we
that's just
think
such
about?
a, like, that's basically
And-
symbolizing hatred right
also-
there. Why would people want to, you know, praise that?
What do we
So-
think about Nicole saying Roots was the movie that they watched? In
Well,
school?
also I wanted to add in that we had to
Sure.
sign a permission slip for that, just because it was really graphic. But
Oh.
I'm perfectly fine with that. I honestly think like we should even at that point in age, like if you're in high school, we shouldn't have to have, you know, a permission slip, just because that is something we all need to see. Like that's legitimately something we need to see. When COVID was happening and in Michigan they were arguing about wearing masks, this woman was comparing like the constitutional rights to like slavery or something. And it's like, girl, that's nowhere, like that's not even close to slavery. Like and the lynchings, everything that happened in slavery, like people need to know that happened. And we should be taught that in school. We should be shown Roots without a permission slip, just because that is our history. So I just want to say that. I'm sorry. You guys can go.
Naomi, were you going to say something?
I was just gonna say how the Confederate general statues, like people tend to forget that these were traitors to our country. Like I don't know why there's like some sort of, it's our history, we have to remember. But these were the people who actually like hated the Union. They didn't want to be a part of the United States anymore. And we have a statue of them. And I think I'll just end it there. I think you wanted to say something.
You have one? Is that it?
Yeah, I completely agree with like taking down these statues. The thing is, like even like we're representing the wrong thing, we're upholding the wrong thing. The American Constitution boasts about equality and liberty for everyone. Like every chance it gets, every history book, every chance it gets, it takes pride on that, but that pride is not reflected into society correctly. And the statues, what impression would they give on like the younger kids who will later grow up and like take the leadership of this country into their own hands. They should not be taught to praise people who oppressed other people solely on the basis of their skin or anything. And like, I completely agree with that. And like, I know people argue that it's history, so put it in a museum, where people can go and learn about it with the rest of the history. We do not need to be having it in the center of like Central Park or something so everyone can praise it and see it. And like, we don't need to look up to those kinds of people.
Let's talk a little bit about home conversations, as much as you're willing to share. How much home conversations have you had about racism, or is most of what you know self-taught? Anyone want to address that?
I'll go. Well, I come from a very foreign like household, and so I have many cousins who are really racist. And I think some lady even came over who was visiting, and she said, you know, she's trying to justify George Floyd's death. And bro, it took a lot out of me not to go downstairs and yell, because that's just like something like, that's something I'm really passionate about. Like, girl, like I'm all about the Black Lives Matter movement, and she just disrespected it blatantly. And she really tried to justify this man's death. Like that was just so disrespectful in a way where I can't even put into words what I was feeling. And so the discussions I have is, so the like I'm Chaldean, and the Chaldean community is not really for going to protest, doing all these things. And so I'm kind of like the outcast, and I do like basically literally the opposite of what the whole, you know, culture goes for. So the discussions for me have been really hard, because I've had family members say like, stop going to protest. Why are you going to protests? And it's like, they all know it's wrong, you know, but there's just so much racism and ignorance. It's so hard to get your point across when someone just is not even willing to listen to you. And so that was just like, it's just really hard for me. But if I were to, you know, be silent, that's no better than like anyone else who's silent, you know? So I just keep like, as much as I hate to say it, I argue, because this is a matter to argue, you know? It's not really like, if you're not gonna listen, I'm gonna have to make you listen, you know what I mean? And that's just my viewpoint on like how I do it in like my household and people around me, just because they're so like uninterested in learning about this stuff when it's our history, you know? So, yeah.
Anyone else?
I would,
Oh, go ahead, Troy.
okay, it's really quick. I was just gonna say, some of you may have also had these types of conversations of whenever another unfortunately, whenever another Black man or woman, person of color gets killed, usually by the police, my family usually has a discussion of what you should do whenever you get pulled over. Make sure you do any and everything so you don't get pulled over. Make sure you're home before dark, so nothing like you. So you just have zero, nothing to worry about. And of course, even with that, with my non-Black friends, I would share with them some of the conversations we're having, and they would say, "Wow, I never would have experienced that. I never would have ever had that sort of conversation, even after certain things have been happening." So that was just one thing I think was worth mentioning, because as people of color, that's something that we have to, moving forward, especially if not, I don't want to say if, especially with the state of the world that it's in, and unfortunately how accountability isn't being taken serious just yet. Those are conversations that are always being had, and unfortunately are always just sparked during times like this, where it just seems almost not safe to even be out. So,
Jack?
Go ahead.
I actually want to like comment that, Troy, that's a very ugly and unfortunate thing that I've heard that occurs. I saw that in the movie, The Hate U Give, what you're discussing. And I thought that kind of opened my eyes. I never really realized that there was like that for like Black people, they do certain behaviors when they are pulled over, so cops are less brutal to them in a sense, but it doesn't even help. And as for like my household, whenever like I watch incidents like this on the news, my parents, my family and I, we just have a talk of how unfortunate it is and ugly that it is and how much there really does need a change, have a need for change.
Very good. We're going to spend, and we started a few minutes late, so we're going just a few minutes over. And I do want to conclude with closing comments from each one of you. Just what should be some of the takeaways that you would like people to have as a result of our conversation? We'll start with Brooke.
My hope is for everyone's fixation on the Black Lives Matter movement to continue well after this summer is over, because the Black Lives Matter movement is more than a moment. It is a movement, and it can't lose momentum until everybody has liberty and justice for all, and until the United States Pledge of Allegiance really does stand for everyone. So that's what I'm hoping for.
Arena?
So like in the beginning, we all introduced ourselves and like you all heard our names and our titles and everything. But unfortunately, many of the people living in this country are identified by nothing other than their skin color or their religion. And like there's these stereotypes, Black people are somehow given this notion of being troublesome and violent, just like Muslims are given the notion of being terrorists and stuff. Many of the minorities in this country face discrimination and racism. And for a country that boasts about equality, that is a very important problem. That's something we all need to face. The sooner we realize that we are one, and like the better off we will be. We all need to see ourselves as one race, the human race, not separate factions or groups. We all need to stay united against this. And as someone said before, this isn't just a movement. We have to keep it going. Every time an incident like this happens, for like a few months after this, everyone talks about equality and then everything fades away. But for once, we need to come to an agreement to like have this movement and this passion keep going until we see actual change in our society.
Nicole?
So what I would just say is we don't even have to be like, if you want to plan on making an impact, you don't even have to go big. Because for me right now, I'm trying to work with like my school district and racism in school and just how we take care of that and how teachers should be held accountable for everything. And so I just want to say like, we're not done yet, because that's like my motto, this is just the beginning, because I feel like the media has stopped, it's all simmered down after a week. Like, this is literally just the beginning of a whole revolution, of a whole movement. And we just got to keep going, because you see, like, even for me, I've seen in protests, like the numbers have decreased. Those numbers got to increase, like we got to keep going. And I just really encourage for people to just keep the passion alive and just keep moving with everything they know that is wrong in this world. So yeah.
Christina?
Just to just take away from this discussion, I think we just need, like what everyone else is saying, just keep pushing, but just not just to like protest and stuff, just probably just getting more active in your community, just like through voting, having more of these dialogues. It's just doing more than just talking, just like you have to, just for real change, just takes a lot of effort and time and like perseverance, just you gotta keep going with it. And yeah.
Good. Naomi?
If there's one thing that I think that we can take away is that we need to keep having dialogues like this. And I think that people who say, oh, I don't really see race, like I don't see race, that's a lie. It's like, it's a very big lie, because I would be lying if I said that I didn't see race. I think we need to pay attention to our inner subconscious and how we are trained, not only in the United States, but as a society, to see race, and how you just need to pay attention to your inner thoughts and how we were trained to, be suspicious of a Black man if he's walking down the street, clutch your purse a little bit, or be suspicious of someone of a different race. And I think if we, really take a look at ourselves and try and work on that and try and be more open about it, with people, like all different kinds of people, and have those conversations, I feel like that's how we can truly heal and, have a place to actually, like Nicole said, it's just the beginning. So you got to really look at yourself first.
Jack.
I just want to say to everyone, you all have like said very beautiful words on the subject of kind of concluding this up. And my final thoughts on this are expand your mind, really look into prominent figures of these types of movements and research them, because as we discussed, we really don't learn about these types of people in school. And that's very unfortunate. And there needs to be a change for that. My concluding statement is kind of from a book that my mom used to read for me, The Lorax. It's when he's talking about the trees and the environment, but I feel like it's very fitting for this. Unless someone like you and me cares an awful lot about, in this sense, race, not a whole lot's going to be changed. In a sense of, if there's more not like-minded people like us willing to discuss the topic and try to improve it's not going to change at all. It's could arguably get even worse.
Troy.
All right. Closing statement, so don't go on a rant. I got you. I think a couple of things I want to say is pay attention to what the people that are in charge of your communities are saying and doing. Because if they're not saying anything, or if they're not saying things you necessarily agree with, realize that you have, if not the power, you can make the change for your community to be better for how you want it to be. And also, I'm gonna say vote, please vote, and encourage everyone you know to vote and to register to vote. Because at least for right now, for a lot of the higher up changes that I am talking about, that is the best way we can do it, to be honest with you. And also, this will be my last thing, okay. For those of us that are passionate about this, that do care, make sure you take the time to take care of yourself, because seeing all of these things years and years and years and over and over and over again, the unfortunateness of it, and just how easy it is for us to see brown and black people be murdered on the streets, it can take a toll on us. And it's important for us to reflect. If your good deed for today is just sharing resources for others, whether it's on your Instagram or Twitter, that's great. I'm proud of you. You did your thing, because this is something that is going to affect us for a while, and probably until it gets fixed. So make sure we're in it for the long haul. That's it.
I just love it. Brooke, Jack, Troy, Christina, Arena, Naomi, and Nicole. I applaud you. If we're looking at our future, from what I see here, we are in good hands. Keep your voices, make your voices heard everywhere, and always stay encouraged. I love it. That concludes this program for today. I hope you can tune in on the 22nd, where we will talk to parents on how they talk to their children about racism. So please tune in then. I'm glad you can join us this evening. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you so very much. Excellent job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Night.
Love you.